Good afternoon, and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego. I'm the Reverend Justine Sullivan, one of the ministers here, along with my colleague, the Reverend Kristen Carriga. We have the honor of presiding today over this service of celebration of the life of Peggy Holl. A few housekeeping things. If you would just check and make sure that your cell phone is set to worship mode, that would be great. Also, if you happen to be wearing hearing aids, good for you. Just check and make sure that they are firmly seated in your ears, because if they come loose, they can cause a squeal, and people online will certainly hear that. And welcome to those of you watching online as well. It is good to be together. Restrooms, you pass the building that on your way here are in Holl, which is where the reception will be also. To my left, your right, just as you walk up toward the parking lot, you'll see Holl on your left, and that's where the restrooms are. It is good to be together.
Hello, let's see here. Hello and welcome. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Peggy's son, Brian. I'd like to thank you all for coming. It means a lot to me and to our family that my mother impacted so many people. This is kind of a picture book of her life. I've seen friends from the neighborhood that we grew up in, from her dinner group, from her beloved UU church, and an entire busload of people from Frederica Manor, where she spent her last time. And it really meant, that place meant a lot to her as well. I would like to thank all of my cousins, her nieces and nephews, from both sides of the family for coming. I know San Diego is not a bad place to visit, especially where a lot of them are from, but it does mean a lot that they came and to see Aunt Peggy. I'd like to thank my sister Karen and her husband Michael, who have been rocks for me during a tumultuous 3 years, let's say. Luckily for me, my sister inherited my mother's organizational skills, and like her, is willing to take charge and get almost any task accomplished. So the majority of this event was created by her, so I very much appreciate it. And finally, I'd like to thank my partner Marie, who has been a constant support. She's been a rock, helping me through both my physical and mental hurdles. I love you, and I couldn't have done this without you. Let's see. So many of you guys were here 28 months ago. We had similar service for my father. On that day, David did an amazing job welcoming with his unique sense of humor and surprising to me public speaking skills. Unfortunately, I have the role of welcoming you guys today. But I want to make sure that we remember my big brother, who we lost way too early a couple years ago. I always admired him as he lived the life he wanted. He loved his cars and fixing them, and since before he could even drive. He was able to follow his love of mechanics and skiing, and was able to find a life in the mountains, in Mammoth Lakes, in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and live how he wanted to. He was one of the hardest working people I knew. He loved his 12 hours on, 12 hours off shifts during huge snowstorms. In large groups, he did not like being the center of attention, probably because he grew up with a sister and a brother who wouldn't stop talking. But he had a great sense of humor and a very interesting to talk to with, in a one-on-one situation. He would be there in a second if you were in need, and I'm so grateful to have gone up to Mammoth and celebrated with his friends and colleagues and to hear them talk about what a great man he was. Oops, I got out for, I thought it was in, sorry about that. I messed up here. Oh, sorry, I got it. Sorry. Sorry, I just got one page turned around. As I mentioned before, all of my cousins are here to support us. Unfortunately, we are -1. In the middle of all the crazy enough in our lives, my cousin Roy was fighting a most noble battle against ALS. During my recent illness, he inspired me every day. The passion in which he lived his life, the attitude in fighting a very unfair illness inspired me to fight the hope he did. Roy, you are missed and definitely not forgotten. The reason we are here, though, today is to celebrate Margaret Davis Holl, Peggy, as we all know her. Others will talk about the friend, the therapist, the dedicated caregiver, the inspiration, the organizer, and the all-around amazing person she was. But I will focus the few moments I have on what she was to me, Mom. After she passed, I started to write down my thoughts to share. However, when we were going through her things, we found a letter that I wrote that I believe when I was 19 years old at summer camp. Yes, for 19-year-olds out there, this is what used to be called a letter. It's written in cursive, which I don't think I can even write with anymore. But it was to my parents, kind of thanking them, and it said everything that I really wanted to say. And so instead of writing my own thing, basically today what I'm going to do is to read a couple passages from that I wrote to them, 34 years ago. So the first part was written to my parents. The reason I bring up this calmness is that is what my life has been, a calm sea with an occasional swell. I was able to travel anywhere in that sea, and when I hit a swell, I had the most amazing lifeboat, my parents. You provided me with love, support, discipline, education, fun, and tranquility. When I wanted to try something new, you were there. When I needed to be driven all over Southern California for soccer games, you were there. When I went to camp, to Thatcher, to Bates, you provided me these opportunities. I never had that stormy ocean because you were always there as my shelter. A friend asked me to describe my parents, and without even realizing, I burst out love and respect. The things that amazes me most is that you have 3 kids who could not be more different, yet we all turned out great people with such different strengths and weaknesses. We all had different interests, yet you were able to nurture these interests and support us however possible. That you were able to give us the same love and needed support to all of us in your own way is a testimony to the great job that you have done. I told my friend, I am the luckiest person alive and could not imagine my life without you. Then I wrote to each of them separately. And to my mom, I wrote, my best friend, a person I can talk to about anything, someone who will listen, help me understand what I am thinking, and help me make the best decision possible. What makes you so special is that no matter how far away I am, you were there with support. Whether it to go to Thatcher, to get a mohawk. I guess that was something I was thinking about at the time. I wish I still had that decision to make, or whether I should wear white or blue socks, you were always there. You were the person who has taken me every soccer game, Cub Scout meeting, shopping trip, and has been by my side during sickness. The sweaters you knit me describe you well. They help me when I need it and show the time and care you spent on me. When I think of my childhood, you are in every memory. 34 years later, these words are still true. I have experienced stormy seas, but she trained me well to deal with these difficulties. She continued as my therapist and advisor, and has always been the person I called when I had issues or a major decision. She provided the best B&B in San Diego with personalized menus, itineraries for what to do in every hour of your stay, and most importantly, constant love. Her boundless support of Karen, David, and me continued to the very end. It was an honor for me to spend the final years in San Diego with her. To watch, even as her health began to decline, she still was more concerned about helping others and her beloved dog, Darwin. I miss you every day and hope wherever you are that David and Dad are with you as they are with me, and that you know that Karen and I are doing well because of your impact in our lives. Once again, thank you all for being part of her life and this celebration, and welcome to UU Church, her home away from home.
We light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, the light of truth and community and justice. It shines and it gives us strength, reminding us that like this flame, we are held and supported by the spirit of life and love. This afternoon, we light this flame to honor our beloved Peggy Holl, to mark this as a sacred time, to share memories and to celebrate the unique gifts of Peggy's life. May this light accompany us as we honor a life well lived. A reading from George Bernard Shaw. This is the true joy of life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. Being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community as long as I live. It is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to the future generations.
In that piece we just heard from George Bernard Shaw that Karen found among Peggy's things, so the reading was important enough to Peggy, to her, that she clipped it out and held on to it. In that reading, Shaw talks about a joyful life being one of purpose, a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. Surely Peggy lived a life not just of purpose, but of a mighty purpose. And I can just hear Peggy's voice proclaiming that one should strive to be a force of nature, for the harder I work, the more I live. I recognize Peggy in those words, and I imagine that you do also. Margaret Peggy Holl was born in Elmira, New York on August 18th, 1938, to Roland and Eleanor Tilton Davis. Peggy attended the Emma Willard School in Connecticut for high school. Now, those of you who are from California may or may not know that the Emma Willard School is quite prestigious, and many of its students are part of the who's who of society, the wealthy and well-connected. Now, I don't know if Peggy's family had that background of wealth and privilege, but it was clear from notes that Peggy had made, not full sentences, because why bother with full sentences when a few notes will capture the essence, but some notes that she had taken and that Karen shared with me. Peggy often felt ill at ease among gatherings of the rich and famous or the well-connected. Not that she didn't know how to talk to rich people. I think it's that she was very, very serious. And maybe she found some of the topics of conversation among the socialites of Connecticut not quite serious or purposeful enough. This would come up later when she was married to her beloved John Holl, a doctor. She was a nurse, highly accomplished in her own right. And yet when she was expected to present herself as one of the doctor's wives, she didn't always know where she fit in. It wasn't personal. I think Peggy got along well with just about everyone, but she didn't like to spend time on things that didn't create, fix, or heal something. Shaw writes, "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can." For Peggy, service was a privilege. In her professional life as a nurse, as a parent and grandparent, and as a church member, which we will hear more about in a moment when our retired minister Kathleen Owen speaks. Peggy also had a strong connection to the recovery communities, and she took seriously her role in helping others to work on their recovery. Earlier in her adult life, Peggy experienced some difficulty with depression and alcohol, and if you have known anyone with that kind of history, it can take a while to find your equilibrium. But Peggy found her way through that dark time and was active in her recovery. She didn't talk about it a lot with people outside of recovery circles, but she did not hide it. If it served someone else for her to share her story, she would share it. And I would count that among her many strengths, that she acknowledged that her life had become unmanageable, and she worked hard to recover and never took that recovery for granted. I imagine that for Peggy, there was too much work to be done in the world to allow substances or depression to run the show. She liked to be the one who ran the show. And maybe those years of vulnerability and real healing softened some of her rougher, no-nonsense edges. Now, I never heard her utter the words, "selfish little clod of ailments and grievances," but I'll bet she chuckled her approval when she came upon those words in that piece by George Bernard Shaw. Peggy got her nursing degree from Northwestern University in Chicago, and after completing her degree, she stayed on in Chicago and worked as a recovery room nurse. And there she met John Holl, who was completing his medical training. They married, and the two moved to Milwaukee and San Francisco and Palo Alto, and then here to San Diego. John was very focused on his medical career, and Peggy managed their household, raising their 3 children, David, Karen, and Brian. And she was busy, volunteering with scouting and immersing herself in her children's interests and activities. Once the children were grown, she got involved in community activities, including lots of things here at First UU, and also other civic and medical aid groups. She made trips to Mexico as part of the Mercy Outreach surgical team and helped many, many people on their paths to sobriety and recovery. I imagine that just about everyone in this community has received gifts of care from Peggy. She is preceded in death by John, her husband of nearly 60 years, and their son David. She is survived by her daughter Karen and her son Brian, her grandchild Emma, and her beloved canine companion Darwin, who was with Peggy when she died. Peggy had been hospitalized after a fall and tried mightily to heal in rehab, but what she wanted most was to return home and die in her own bed with her beloved Darwin lying at her feet. Peggy had made it possible for John to die at home, and I'm sure it was a great comfort to both Peggy and her family that this was possible for her as well. Thank you, Peggy, for all that you gave. Truly yours was a splendid torch that burned brightly, and now you pass that torch on to us. You have earned your rest. May you rest in peace, beloved. And now let us sing together one of Peggy's favorite hymns, Spirit of Life. It's number 123, if you care to look in your hymnal, but the words will appear on the screen. And you can stay seated for this.
May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. Service was Peggy Holl's prayer in everything she did. And it's hard today to speak of Peggy and not mention John, because they were partners. They did almost everything together. They were partners in service and care for people in general, but specifically I knew them to be partners in care of this community. And Peggy was an institutionalist and loyal right to the very end. My first week as associate minister here started on April 16th, Arvid's birthday, in 2007. And on Monday, I moved into my office. Tuesday was full of staff meetings. Wednesday, I was given a little time by myself to kind of unpack and settle in. And then my first meeting with lay leaders was on Thursday at 9 o'clock. And it was with Peggy and John. They were the lay leaders of the caring ministry team, and now I was the staff leader. Now, John and I connected because we both came from small towns in Indiana, but Peggy and I connected over our shared understanding of what caring for others looked like and what it felt like. And maybe for both of us, we had a similar understanding, and we could both come on a little, maybe too strong for some people, but always with a lot of heart. So they spent the meeting describing to me the way the caring ministry team worked, the practical care piece, the lay minister piece, and the advisory group. And I spent that hour taking a lot of notes and listening as much as I could. And when that hour was over, and it started on time, and Peggy ended it on time, we had already scheduled 3 different meetings for the next month. And that's how we worked together for the next 14 years. Now, the practical care part, including staffing that caring table every Sunday after the service out on the patio, encouraging and sometimes begging members and friends of the community to finish their end-of-life emergency sheets because we needed to know what you needed or wanted, and always pushing those 5 wishes forms. Peggy wanted all of us to be prepared. Peggy and John ensured that the medical equipment to be loaned out was clean and in good working condition. And Peggy and I together introduced supercards to the congregation. Peggy would make them up for people who were sick and couldn't come to church. She would cut out pictures from greeting cards and paste them in the corners, and then in colorful markers and beautiful handwritten script would write the person's name on the top. She would often make several up in advance, just to be ready, to be prepared. And in fact, that super card that we all signed back in August when Peggy fell was one that she herself had made. Karen said, "This was so typical of Mom." And I knew Peggy. And the way I knew her was that idle time wasn't really a concept that she understood. She did what she needed to do to feel ready and to be able to help at a moment's notice. Peggy had a personal commitment to many people here, but especially to people who lived alone. She and John would go to doctor's appointments with folks, help them move into assisted living when it was time for that, go back and clean out that apartment where Everett Waldo and Kachina and others had lived. For a very few, she washed their laundry and shopped for them on a regular basis. And she always let me know when she thought someone was in need of a visit from me. The monthly lay minister meetings, though, were an intense and special time together. We met every month, and they were a time of deep learning and sharing. One year, the group and I were studying our way through Parker Palmer's book, A Hidden Wholeness, learning about circles of trust and how to ask open questions and listen very deeply. And in those meetings, we would practice those skills. So one Saturday, I told a story about an experience I had had years ago. And when I finished, we sat in a moment of silence, and then I asked for open questions from the lay ministers. Peggy, in a quiet voice, looked me in the eyes and asked, "What does home mean to you?" And immediately, tears welled. And they fell down my cheeks. Her question went straight to the essence of that story I had told and thought I had processed enough. But her question reminded me I had work to do. So I was there crying, the group was silent, and I said, "Now that was an open question, and I did not expect it, and I am crying, and it's okay." And then there was a pause, and Peggy leaned in further and said, "Kathleen, what does home mean to you?" She was inviting me not only to facilitate a process, but to experience it for myself. That's who Peggy was. Years later, when Peggy's energy slowed, she and I had a hard conversation about leadership succession. It wasn't easy because she cared fiercely and she was a doer. But after our talk, and I'll be honest, it took more than one conversation, Peggy reached out to Chris Smith, who is a medical professional in her own right and was a lay minister. And together they worked on the care ministry team in a leadership position that then Peggy handed over that leadership to Chris. Peggy had an ability to listen even when there was tension. When finances looked bleak at one time for the food pantry, and some people feared that that food pantry might be shut down or its services severely limited, Peggy came to talk to me. She listened as I explained what I knew and what might be possible. She listened carefully, and then in her quiet way, she looked at me and said, "Kathleen, service is our prayer." Peggy's presence in this church, in the caring ministry team, and in my ministry, it goes far beyond these words. I miss her, and I love her, and I choose to honor her by living out loud the truth that service is our prayer. I think that was that one. Hard to tell at that age.
Whew. That was just a really wonderful remembrance, Kathleen. Thank you. And thank you, Brian and Karen, for all the hard work you did to organize today's event and last night's cookie event, which was really fun. I hope everyone enjoys the fruits of our labor from last night. And I'd just like to do a little shout out, wherever the camera is, to my sister Lori, who can't be here, and to my brother Roy's wife, Amy, who also can't be here. And to my brother Roy. He is here in spirit, I know. When I asked family members to share their thoughts and memories and stories about our Aunt Peggy, I was impressed by the impact that she had on so many of us. She cared deeply about her brother's children and their spouses, and her grandnieces and grandnephews. My sister Wendy's daughter Jill told me that Aunt Peggy influenced us in many small, sweet ways. She truly cared about what we were doing and what we were thinking. My sister-in-law Robbie recalls that Peggy was the first person to truly welcome her into the Davis family. And when Peggy and John came to Minnesota for a family event many years ago, Peggy asked Robbie if they could stay with them. And they had such a good time together, so much that Robbie and Rob invited them to stay with them whenever they visited. They were such considerate and enjoyable house guests, Robbie said. And I really enjoyed their visits, and I got to know them really well as a result. On one of their last visits to Minnesota in 2020 for my parents' celebration of life, Rob met them at the airport. When he drove up to the arrivals curb, he was all ready to get out of the car to help the two 80-something-year-olds get their bags. However, before he could even unbuckle his seatbelt, they had walked briskly to the car, opened the doors, threw in their bags, and climbed in. "Let's go," Peggy said. A year later, at my niece Rachel's wedding, my brother Roy's daughter, they were outlasting the youngsters on the dance floor. Roy's wife, Amy, told me that they just had such a good time, and people kept coming up to me, she said. "Who are those old people out there on the dance floor? They're having so much fun." We all benefited from the many interactions that we had with both Peggy and John over the years. Peggy called me regularly to check in to see how I was doing and catch up on my family happenings. She always seemed to time her calls when I was embroiled in some particularly challenging situation. She was a good listener and demonstrated a true interest in how I was doing and what challenges I was facing. She often asked me during our conversations, "So what are you doing for yourself?" And if I didn't have a really good response, she offered helpful suggestions as to how best to go about that. I always hung up the phone feeling as though my load was a little lighter and my head a little bit clearer. My sister Wendy also had many meaningful conversations with Peggy, including a particularly supportive call just a few months ago when Wendy was returning to the difference on her road to recovery. As others have mentioned, Peggy loved to be of service to others. She was happiest when she was busy, and that spilled over during her visits to Minnesota for graduations, weddings, and birthday celebrations. She always chipped in to help, whatever the circumstances. During Jill and Peter's graduation, Wendy recalls Peggy asking her what she could do to help. When Wendy hesitated, she said, "Well, why don't I take over the kitchen?" And so she did. And of course, things ran like clockwork. Peggy and John hosted many visits from us as well. One of my favorites was when my daughter Trish, I practiced and thought I'd be able to do this one. She was just 2 years old, and my husband Peter and I would take Trish for an outing in the morning, SeaWorld, the San Diego Zoo, or a trip to the beach. And then Peggy would meet us in Balboa Park with a picnic lunch and whisk Trish off to her house for an afternoon nap and playtime with their dog Magic, a 90-pound Doberman mix. That provided Peter and me time to explore San Diego, and it was very fun. One of my favorite pictures of Trisha is of her sprawled across Magic, both of them sound asleep. My tribute to Peggy's memory would not be complete without mentioning her and John's wedding. It was, I believe, the first true memory that Rob, Wendy, and I have of her. Peggy and John were married in September 1963, and the wedding was a huge affair. Rob, who had turned 5 in March, was the ring bearer, and Wendy and I, who had turned 4 in May, were the flower girls. We were dressed all in white, as you could see, and it had poured rain the night before. As a result, the adults were very worried that we would get mud and grass, not only grass stains, but mud on our pristine white shoes and clothes. So we had to step very carefully from one stepping stone to the other on our way to the waiting car. The picture in Peggy's wedding album is really charming, so if you have a chance, take a look. Wendy and I were thrilled that we got to ride with the bride. But we had to stand up in the back of the car because they didn't want us to muss up our crinoline petticoats. And because Peggy's dress took up the entire back seat. Summers at Lake Sunapee were also fond memories for all of my family members. My younger sister Lori recalls lots of laughter, playing with the cousins on the beach, and the family dinners at the big wooden table. Rob recalls being quarantined with the mumps one summer when he was 8 or 9 years old. Peggy happened to have the room next to his and was trying to sleep. Rob, who by then was bored of his forced confinement, was jumping on the bed and quite literally bouncing off the walls. He distinctly remembers overhearing Peggy saying to our mom, Jill, in that lilting tone Peggy liked to use when she was making a point, "Well, he must be feeling better. He's been pounding on that wall for an hour." Self-sufficiency, preparedness, compassion for others, and a deep sense of the importance of family are all words that come to mind when I think back over my Aunt Peggy's life. I will always treasure the memories I have of her, and I am particularly grateful for the visit I had with her last March. It was the first time in many years that I had an opportunity to spend some quality time with my aunt, as well as her many friends at the Frederica Manor. I truly enjoyed myself, developed a renewed appreciation for high-quality chocolate sauce, and am so very glad that I had an opportunity to tell her how much I loved her one last time. Thank you.
These are hard acts to follow, and I'm not used to speaking to a group. I'm Maureen Hansen, and my husband and I know Peggy and John for over 50 years. We met when we joined the Medical Wives Auxiliary, and our husbands were starting to practice, and the auxiliary was forming gourmet dinner groups of 6 couples each, so people could get to know each other. And Peggy and John and Galen and I were assigned to the same dinner group. We had orthopedists, and we had obstetricians and anesthesiologists in our group. The format was to meet in each other's homes once a month, and the hostess planned a theme, and then she chose recipes and sent out to the rest of the people so they knew what to bring. We continued to meet once a month for years, but as time went on, we became more casual and became a potluck group. We lost a few couples along the way because of relocations, divorces, deaths, and remarriages. Then we became picky eaters and drinkers. No beef, no chicken, no fish, only veggies. Everybody had a different menu that they liked. So after the men retired, we decided we would be a lunch group, meeting at restaurants and ordering off of the menu whatever we wanted to have. We had difficulty establishing a regular schedule. So guess who was the glue that kept us together? Peggy. In the end, there were only 3 of the original couples, plus a widow of one of the original persons in our group. We continued meeting after John's death. We were sure that the other dinner groups had dissolved years earlier. One special activity that we had was one of our members, the Lakes, have a boat. And every year we went on their boat for the Parade of Lights, and then we would stay in the harbor and we would have dinner on the boat. And Peggy made sure every year, because I think the Parade of Lights were like 4 times, that she talked to the Lakes and made sure there was a definite schedule and we were on the calendar, way ahead of December. Besides the Holls and the Hansons' love of dogs, we loved to travel to new and different destinations. And although Peggy and John traveled a lot on their own, so did Galen and I, but we discovered we were good traveling companions. So Peggy and John joined some of the groups of friends that I put together when I was working in travel. We went to Kenya and South Africa and Russia and Mexico. And then just the 2 couples of us went on to Poland, Italy, Greece, and Crete. And we had so many laughs when we rented a car and the men shared the driving and they got lost and drove up one-way streets and drove on pedestrian-only streets, and Peggy and I ducked down in the back seat and just laughed and laughed and laughed. Let's see, what was I going to say? Okay, I told you that. I got some more to say. And then about Peggy's sense of humor. One time I had put together a group and we were going somewhere and we were meeting at the airport. And if any of you have traveled in a group or seen groups of travelers, that there's an umbrella up or a sign or something, Well, we were all gathering, and pretty soon Peggy arrives, and she has a balloon, and she gave it to me because I was the designated leader. And then we were in St. Petersburg, Russia, and it was right after tourism opened up, and we were staying in a rather marginal hotel with limited services, and one of the members of our group had a birthday. So someone saved some kind of a dessert or something we had at dinner, which was very basic. And Peggy said, we really need to have a birthday cake. So she went up to her room and came back with a feminine product so we would have a candle for that piece of dessert. She was a dear friend, and I admired her involvement in the community and her church, as you've all heard. She was loyal and known for her outstanding planning skills, and she was unselfish with her time and available to support others. She was a dedicated daughter, caring for her mother's needs when she was living with Alzheimer's. She volunteered to plan activities for patients even after her own mother no longer knew her. Peggy was a very special friend. Her passing has left an empty place in my heart.
Oh my gosh. Hi. I've never been on this side. It's crazy. I don't know where this is going to go, so good afternoon. My name's Darcy. I'm a friend of Karen's, but I've grown adjacent and like family to the Holls for, I think I've known you almost 40 years. I'm 45. I should work on my math. It's exciting to have known Peggy and be part of her crew. I mean, look at all you guys. She touched us all in a million different ways. And I think because of her and the way she connected with us and John, their legacy will just continue to go on. She lived a life. We've heard it today. We felt it. I know Peggy wouldn't want me to cry. I'm pretty sure I'm going to, but I'm going to stick with the speech. As I stand here now, I remember the first time I came here. I think I was 12 or 13. Karen and I had become friends in middle school, right after Peggy had started going through her sobriety, I guess, which I didn't really connect until I was grown up. Anyway, I remember sitting back there in Peggy and John's spot and watching that tree. And you never know what a core memory is going to be for you, but that tree has gone through my life. The roots in that tree for me go deep, just like Peggy and John in this church and with the people they connect. I'm really reminded of how Peggy and John, Karen, David, Michael, showed me how to live a life, and it, for me, has been a life well lived and well respected. I can't put into words how lucky it was to have a gift of time with Peggy in so many different stages of life. I mean, I met her before my life had taken over, to become who I would be now, to carry the kids that I carried, to have the friendships that I made, and the career that I have. But Peggy, at the time that I met her, I'm finally connecting, was also at a point where she was ready to start a new life. And how lucky for us to have, and for me, to have had that gift of her giving herself another chance. When my kids were born, it was Peggy who was one of the first people to come and hold that picture. And so when I saw that picture of Emma up there, I have that same picture, but with my kids. And Peggy didn't tell me how to be a mom, how to be a wife. She showed me in her daily gestures, not in the words, but in her actions. And I think we've heard that today. So just bear with me while I take you on my journey with Peggy and the Holls. I compiled a little list. I'm a teacher by trade. And when Peggy passed away, and I was teaching a book that I've read 20 times in my career. And each time I read it, there's always something in life that's happening, but in this particular chapter of my life, we were reading a book called Because of Winn-Dixie. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. So it's basically the gist of the story is this kiddo is experiencing some stuff in her life, and she's trying to find her place in the world. And she's struggling, and she's got lots of questions. And she asks her dad, and he's a minister, but he's really focused on his ministry and not his biological family. And he eventually comes up with a list of 10 things that will help her to understand what this kiddo's needing from life. And with that, I created my own Peggy's list, which, boy, a lot of what I was going to say was shared today. So it's just so neat that Peggy was who she was for all of us. She didn't change for anyone. She stayed true to who she was. So the first thing on my list is one. Commit and connected. When we look around here, she committed. She committed and she connected in all corners of her life. We've got the church, we've got her AA, we've got her family, her friends, her her dinner club, which I'm pretty sure were the Howletts part of the dinner club too? Yeah. Which I didn't connect. I'm so finally excited to see Maureen. I've been hearing about her for my whole life, but Peggy and John had this friend who had a boat who needed someone to take care of their aging cat. And I was in the process of getting my teaching credential, and they offered me a chance to live at this house in a bunk bed, taking care of this cat who had to have been 18 years old. But because of that time that John and the Howletts and Peggy gave me, my husband and I, my future husband and I, were able to buy a house. And from that, they helped us get started on our life, but it was because they were committed. They're just little acts of service. You just never know what one choice is going to do, what one decision is going to make. So I guess what I was trying to say is when Peggy made a point and found you, she stuck with you. What a gift to have connections and commitments that run so deep and so long, which leads me to number 2 on my list. You have to be connected. For real, you have to be connected, which is be present. Be present, be not an imposition. She was something and someone for everyone in this room. She impacted us in big ways and in little ways. And it was just amazing what she could do for all of us. How lucky to have the gift of that, to be alive and to be fully in your actions, your beliefs, and your commitments. Which takes me to, I just did 3, sorry. 4 is listen. Listen, my list is not correct. Listen and be sincere. Listen with your heart. Peggy taught me to listen. We listen, but sometimes our mind takes over. Our eyes judge, and we just don't connect. There's just, for me, she had a power. She probably could say some powerful words. She chose not to. She helped you in her actions, in her deeds. If I'm sure every so often she'd give me that look, take a deep breath. I just felt with Peggy, and she just taught me from a young age, if your words are going to hurt, we're not here to harm. We're here to help. We're here to serve. We're here to commit. It was a lifetime of practicing that. When John passed away, I was asked by Brian to take Peggy to the theater, which was such a gift. I know it sounds so funny. I took her to the theater and to the symphony. And Peggy liked her routine. And she and John would go on Tuesday nights because that was when you could talk to the director or the producer. There was a little meet and greet. And Peggy liked to go. John liked to park in a certain spot, and they went a certain way. And first couple times, I'm a native San Diegan. The first couple times I went with Peggy, I did as she instructed, because I didn't want to be disrespectful. But at the same time, we found a groove. And eventually, she allowed me to talk my way into parking right at the Old Globe, where all the people had paid a lot of money for that precious spot, but I could talk my way into it, and Peggy just thought that that was the funniest thing. So with all these luxury cars is my little Subaru covered in dog hair. And I think Peggy thought we got a deal. And one of these occasions, because you go so many times to this Tuesday thing, you begin to know who the people are that are going to be there. There's always this guy who was full of himself. And you could expect it. And he didn't listen. He just talked. And I remember one time Peggy gave me that look. It's time to go. She got up, wasn't obnoxious, and just said, "Boy, he thinks a lot of himself." And off we went. What a gift to be able to just fully listen, let the things hang in the air. Not all thoughts need to be shared. She was sincere, she was humble, and I sure do miss her. My numbers are off, so I'm just going to do the rest. I'll speed it up, yeah. Peggy was curious. I know, it went on. I thought it might. Karen told me 3 minutes, and I was like, Peggy never stopped learning. She valued her time. She used it well. A minute was never lost, nor a dollar ever wasted. She didn't slow down. She kept being curious. She just was an amazing person. I just want to thank you guys just for this journey. It's just been fantastic. So she's missed, and you are loved. Thank you. That was just wonderful.
So now we have a chance to sing together. This is one of my favorite songs, and I believe it was one of Peggy's as well. It's called Blue Boat Home, and the words will appear on the screen.
I will sail me home. When my father died, one of his friends wrote, "Most of us spend our lives expanding our resumes. John spent his expanding his eulogy." That was equally true of my mother. Others have talked about my mother's extensive volunteer work, and so like my brother, I'd like to talk about my relationship with her. Those of you who know my mother and me know that she and I share many traits. I appreciate that she was a role model for me in her organizational skills and her volunteering for whatever activity she was involved with. Of course, we are both strong-willed and outspoken, and so we did butt heads at times, particularly during my teenage years. Because I went to M. Willard boarding school like my mother, and to summer camp, my mother and I frequently corresponded via hard copy letters. One of the correspondences when I was a senior in high school was about the death of her close friend, June Kendall. After attending June's funeral, my mother wrote, quote, "While it wasn't easy, my trip to Compshe was gratifying. The service was beautiful and full of feeling and love. I've never experienced anything like it before. June had touched each person's life that was there, and I could feel it. No one was ashamed to show and or share their feelings, and the entire group united in June's love." Unquote. Amongst the many other things I wrote her back, we corresponded for a while, I wrote in my reply letter to her was, quote, "When you feel how many other people's lives she touched, you realize that she will never truly be gone," unquote. I can feel that everybody here is united in Peggy's love. And I know that with all the lives she touched, she will never truly be gone. We also corresponded about the fact that that celebrations of life really should be celebrations. And I'm really glad that we are celebrating her today, and that people should wear bright colors. And I wore this because I thought my mom would really like it. So that's what I wore today. Okay. Like Brian said, one of the things I appreciated most about both my parents is that they were always there for us. They recognized that my brothers and I were very different people and supported our distinctive paths. As we got older, they knew that we needed to make our own decisions, though of course they offered advice and support. They were proud of all of us, and we are grateful to them. I also appreciate the support that my mother gave me in raising my own child. My parents were there taking care of Emma during the night when I came home from the hospital when she was born. They came to Santa Cruz when Emma's daycare had spring break, and we didn't. And they were there to ride in the car parade when Emma graduated during COVID. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity over the couple of months before my mother's death to spend a lot of time with her and to thank her for some of the many things that she did for me. I want to share two stories related to my husband's, Michael's, and my wedding that epitomize my mother. Our wedding was my mother's organizational tour de force. No detail was left to chance. My mother would taste 5 carrot cakes so that when Michael and I came into town, we could taste the 2 best ones. We told her that we wanted to get married outdoors because, we're both ecologists. And so she found parks like Balboa Park, and we said, no, we want a natural area. So she found Silverwood Wildlife Sanctuary in East County where our wedding was held. When we showed up in San Diego on Thursday for a Saturday wedding, my mother had a 9-day planner on her refrigerator with everything that needed to be done. And yes, at times Michael and I would go back and go, oh my God, what happened? We were overwhelmed. We did consider eloping a couple times. But ultimately, we were incredibly grateful that we were able to enjoy the wedding and all the attendees because we didn't have to worry about the details. I appreciated all that she did for our wedding and thanked her many times, but the thing that still to this day gets me choked up is what happened the day after. Michael and I went up to spend a couple nights at a bed and breakfast in Julian that belonged to a friend of my mother's. And we arrived there on Sunday afternoon, and we were exhausted after 2 nights of nonstop activities with friends. And the last thing we really wanted to do was to go out to dinner. And we got into the B&B and we opened the refrigerator, and my mom had driven up in advance and left vegetarian chili in the fridge so that we had something to eat the night we showed up. That was my mother. She thought of every little detail and went above and beyond. My second story, as many of you, I know a number of you here were at our wedding, may remember we planted a tree. And each of our parents said something and watered it. A year later, on our anniversary, we returned to Silverwood to see our tree. We admired it and remembered what a wonderful wedding of the year before. Then we walked back down the trail to the parking lot, and there was a young staff member in the lot, and he said, and we were telling him how much we really enjoyed seeing our tree, and he replied, "Oh, there were some people here last weekend planting it." That was my parents. They had gone out to check a few weeks prior and discovered that it had died. They went to a nursery and picked out one that had a similar structure so we wouldn't know. My mother was so mad at the guy. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I recognized the irony of the fact that I, who plant trees as part of my profession, couldn't successfully plant a tree, and Brian thinks it's really funny. And the other story there too is that about 5 years after that, there was a big fire at Silverwood, and so the one that they planted also died. But fortunately, I'm not superstitious, and I'm happy to say that Michael and I are still happily married 30 years after. And I would also like to say I'm really, really grateful to you for all his support over the past year as I spent expensive time in San Diego supporting my mother. And I'm also really grateful to my brother Brian, who has been my partner in supporting my mother, and also his partner Marie, in working together. It's been seamless, and I really appreciate it. Ultimately, what the story illustrates to me is that the fact that all of our lives, our marriages, our relationships with friends depend on the support of others. My parents gave so much to the people in the communities in which they were involved. I always knew this, and it has been reinforced by all the lovely messages that I have received from you all over the past few months, and also my father's passing. Brian and I, again, want to thank all of you who supported my mother over the past couple of years as she navigated the challenges of not driving, of enduring multiple falls, and starting to lose her short-term memory. When she had her fall in late August, I set up a Google sheet to people to sign up to come visit her, mostly because I didn't want 8 people showing up on the first day, and that's a good problem to have. Within 3 days following my mother's death, we had 2 offers of people willing to take her beloved Darwin. So thanks to Carlene, whose sister took, and Darwin's now living in the high desert near Las Vegas with a 15-year-old blind gold retriever and doing quite well. So he's doing well. A lot of people have asked me about him. It reminded me, these things remind me of how many lives she touched and how fortunate she and I are to have such a rich circle of friends. I want to express my deepest thanks to all of you for what you did for my mother in her last few months, the support you have given Brian and me, and for making the effort to be here today. Thanks.
Please join me in a moment of meditation or prayer. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for the life of Peggy Holl. We have heard stories about her service to the world in relationship to the humans and other beings, the natural world that she so loved. My prayer for Peggy is that she knew how very much we appreciated and admired her and loved her. I hesitate to wish her rest because I'm not sure that that would be an idea of heaven for Peggy. And so my parting prayer for Peggy is that all of her activity will yield results that she feels are worthy of the investment that she places in that work, that she can be part of creating something beautiful as she did here on this earth. Thank you, dear Peggy, for sharing your gifts with all of us. We love you, and you will be with us always. Amen, and blessed be.
So we'd like to invite you to join us in a reception over in Bard Hall, which is off to your left. As many of you know, my mother liked to make sugar cookies, and there was actually a photo in the slideshow of her rolling out cookies. She had cookie cutters for every occasion. She had like bats for Halloween and pumpkins, and she had them for shamrocks. She had everything, Christmas. So last night, some of my cousins and a couple of close friends helped, and we decorated cookies. So we hope you'll join us for cookies. She also, as you know, she loved ice cream. So we're gonna have cookies and ice cream in Bard Hall. We would also appreciate those of you who haven't already, if you would take a moment to write a memory down for us that maybe one we don't know about, that you can, or whatever, some inspiration on a card. And the last thing I wanted to mention too is that we're very happy that my brother Brian's cancer is in remission. However, he is still immunocompromised, so if he's wearing a mask and he's gonna maybe do some fist bumps, maybe give him a little bit of space, because there's a lot of diseases going around, right now. So anyways, we'll hope you will join us for a little while to talk. Thanks.
As we go forth from this place, let us know that we are held in love, and may service be our prayer. Amen.